Hello. Hello, let me share this in my group so that people can see it while it's happening. See if technology communicates with itself. Yes, here we go. Okay. So I will just hit share. Share in a group. Hoping that today is finding you well. I am enjoying, actually. When the weather turns cold, I freak out and panic, and I'm like, no, I don't want it to be cold. And I'm actually enjoying the weather today. So there it is. But I'm in like a rocking chair in my grandmother's sweater. She's English, obviously. And have my cup of tea, or it's just hot water. But I want to talk about what your purpose is. So this is a hot topic for almost all of us at some point in our life. And if that's you right now, then you know what I mean. It feels all consuming, and it's one of those giant questions that you're like, if only I had the answer, I'd know what to do. But the answer is also really big and amorphous. So what do I do? Yeah, right. Yes, that's what we're going to talk about. That feeling of, I need this clarity. Why don't I have this clarity? Without this clarity, I can't survive. But also this thing is really big, and perhaps there's no sense of clarity. So I want to talk about a couple different aspects. One is the what is your purpose, right? And the second is what do we really mean by that? So many people, when they start asking questions around their purpose, are asking a couple different questions at different times. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. I may or may not see them because I'm on the phone and I swipe left to reveal comments and reactions. There is no swiping left. So if you have comments, pop them in. I apologize if I don't see them. And hopefully you can hear me. Actually, let me check to make sure there's volume. Yes, people can hear me. Okay. So when you go to ask a question like, what is my purpose? I want to break it down because this is what I focus on, right? I'm probably the leading voice on purpose right now in the world. So when we talk about what's your purpose, hey, Roseanne, if you have any, I was just saying this, if you have any questions, pop it below. I hope I'll be able to see them. I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes I'm not as phone literate with Facebook as I want to be with comments. Hey, Shannon. So when we talk about purpose, we frequently confuse exactly what we're talking about. And that confusion draws more stress in our system. Hello. Oh, good. I can see a comment. Thank you, Roseanne. Proving that I can actually see comments. I am not the odd one out on Facebook who can't see comments. So when we talk about purpose, we're frequently talking about a couple different things, and it's really helpful to get clear so that you know the type of answer that you're looking for. So I'll just give you a range of things that we call purpose. There's what's the point of life? Why are we here on this planet? That is a question about the purpose of like our species and what we're doing. Thank you. It's my, sorry, I just saw the comment, delayed reaction. This is my grandmother's sweater. She's English, obviously, by the English farm animals. And I'm super excited to wear it today. So I've got my cup of hot water, my cozy sweater. So when we talk about purpose, that level of purpose is an existential purpose, right? These are all existential questions, but this one is like the big one. Like, what is the purpose of life on this planet? What are we doing here? Oh, good. This is about, like we're spinning on a giant ball in the universe. Like what? That level of question and that level of answer is very different than the question around purpose of what am I meant to do with my life in the social economic sense of how I participate in our economy and our culture. Fundamentally different answers and very, very different questions. But we ball them all up into the same category of what's my purpose. And then there's also questions around what's our purpose as humans? What's our purpose as expressions of life? What's our purpose, if you're in a religious, if you come at things from a religious point of view, like what's my purpose in relation to God, in relation to life itself and source? Again, a different question, not as big as what's the purpose of us being here on this planet, not as small as what's my purpose in how I show up every day and interact with those socioeconomic structures, but sort of in between, right? Like what's the point? What's the point? Oh, awesome. Tell me, I'd love to know what you were talking about. And what your take on it was, or where you got to. Because this is huge. And so I get a lot of people so the way that I approach purpose is a couple different ways, because we have all these different levels of question that we're asking. And my general approach is that what people really are asking when they're asking about purpose is, how do I personally feel meaningful in my day-to-day life and meaningful in the way I show up in the world, and then like I have something to hold on to as the world is spinning. Now all three levels are in that, right? It's me as what I do, how I contribute, how I leave a legacy. It's me as I know what I'm here to do is distinct from you and somebody else, and why I'm living. And then the third piece is, give me something solid to hold on to in this giant spinning world that seems to be very confusing, but I need to root, I need to ground in something. So I answer the question, I help people figure out those answers for themselves on all those different levels. But where we can get really hung up is by not actually understanding that they're different. And the way that I approach purpose is that our purpose, my understanding of purpose, the way that I work with purpose is, hold that thought, let me read this. Basically the same, I just decided that I'm here in this reality and it's time to have some fun. Yes. Yeah, so that's that middle level question of like, what's the point of life? Not like, why are we spinning on the rock in the world and the universe, but like that, what's the point of life? Am I missing the point? I think I kind of missed it. Am I supposed to have a little bit more fun? Like, am I taking this too seriously? That's that sort of middle layer about like, why do we exist? And like, what's the emotional context of existing? What's really behind the doing and moving into the being? Perfectly expressed. I love that. So the way that I approach purpose is that each one of us, hey Lynn, nice to see you, lady. Yes, exactly. So you can see in this that most of us have that feeling of like, I was missing the point. We get that at sometimes. And sometimes the point is, I was missing the point of engaging. Sometimes it's, I was missing the point of disengaging and having a little fun and witnessing. Sometimes it's the point of, I was just missing the point of witnessing. So all of these different answers can apply depending on where we're at and how we're trying to approach the question of purpose. And the way that I approach purpose, to finally finish this sentence, is as an emotional and energetic state that we hold. So I believe that each one of us embodies our purpose. We don't have to look for it. It is who you are, but we can be clear about what that energy that we're embodying is. And so we embody a spectrum of energy for some people, for me, it's not enough to enough, right? Enoughness to not enoughness. And that spectrum, that scale of experience is what I'm continually experiencing in my life, right? And that can be on a meta level about enoughness in the sense of human existence versus God versus universe versus what's the point, right? Like, how does enoughness function with the question of what's the point and do I matter? All the way down to actually helping people feel like they're enough, finding a sense of enoughness, finding that inner peace, finding that stillness, right, on a personal level. So that emotional spectrum can carry me through any number of experiences, breakups, bad jobs, good jobs, volunteer experiences, friendships, the whole 9 yards, because that way of looking at my life is able to capture everything that I'm experiencing. And when I look through the lens of that purpose, for me, that emotional spectrum, I'm able to make sense of my life. Feeling into this and working with Alexis to answer this question and others totally changed everything. Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. You're amazing. And please, if you want to add something to Shannon from your experience, I would love to hear it, your experience with this and the way that you've now approached it, because you've taken some of this and put it into how I show up in the world, what your legacy is, how it impacts your day-to-day, all of that from a place of being. And that's what that spectrum, that emotional spectrum, helps us get at. It helps us get at the state of beingness within us. Now, do I think that knowing your purpose in that way, in an emotional spectrum way, in a super general way, is satisfying for people? No, I don't. Because I've been at this long enough to know that people are like, that's not a job title. I was trying to find out if I should go to be a lawyer or a doctor, and you just told me an emotional spectrum that I'm holding. Duh, I knew that. It's like, well, we didn't have words for it. But yeah, that doesn't satisfy us when the question we're really asking is, how can I contribute in a meaningful way? Right? So if you've been really stuck on what's my purpose, and you're not feeling fulfilled by the types of answers you're getting, it's possible that the question you're actually asking is, how can I feel relevant and meaningful in my day-to-day actions and feel like the way that I contribute to the world is important to me on an emotional level? And that's a personality-based question, right? It's not a spiritual evolutionary question about yourself as an expression of life or God. It's a personality question about, why me? Why me now? Why me here? Why me with these skills? Why me with these interests, right? It's about how we apply all of this into something right here. And that can be a process of like, it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's a lot of it uncomfortable because of compression. We're taking all of this and squeezing it into something here, right? It's got to go through this big giant funnel and be filtered through our skills, our interests, our the things we hate, like our sarcasm, like all that stuff. It's got to be filtered through that stuff to get us to the answering of the question of, how can I feel meaningful on a day-to-day basis, and how can I provide meaningful service in the world so that my day-to-day doesn't feel like a giant existential freak out of why am I spinning on this rock, but I feel like I know how I'm contributing, and that's soothing for my mind. When I'm off kilter, I go back to the answer of being. And then I choose from that space of, does it fit into how I totally want to be in the world? Yes, exactly. Personality based, so good. Yes. So I'll be honest here. The answer that I give people, that I help people find, I don't give it to you, right? The answer that I help people clarify in themselves of, what is the energy that my soul is holding here? What is my soul's purpose in the world? That does... that helps us move through everyday life. That helps us move through life. It helps us reframe when we're feeling off kilter. It helps us come back to center. It helps us re-find ourselves and make sense of the experiences in our lives. It takes all the bad experiences and helps us reframe them into areas for personal growth so we can use every aspect of life to strengthen ourselves. What it doesn't do is tell you if you should be a lawyer or a doctor. It'll tell you which one will be more satisfying for you, but it doesn't answer that question of, if I do this every day, did my life matter? But it helps you on the path to that. And I'm going to talk about something a little bit deep here, as if we're in the topic of purpose anyway, but I'm going to take a little bit of a deeper dive detour here, and I want you to stay with me. So when we're talking about all these different levels of purpose that go all the way up to, why does life exist, right? We're talking about big, big questions. And when we're talking about meaning, we're talking about big, big questions too. Do I matter? Does life matter? What is the part that matters about it? Is it connection? Is it love? Is it expression? Is it that I was here? Is it that I'm being here? Does action matter or does being matter? Is it better to meditate and know the oneness of totality, or is it better to be out there in life shaking hands and smiling and loving and being part of it? Like, what's the best way to go about it, right? And all of us attach meaning in different ways, and all of us find meaning from different types of interaction. And that's really, really huge, because when we start to work with purpose, when you start to work with your purpose and say, I want to live more of my purpose, I want to live more on purpose, and I want to have purpose, again, three very different ways of expressing purpose. What we're really saying is, I want to know what's meaningful to me and how to apply meaning to things that I do and experiences that I have. So basically we're saying, I want to be in charge of the meaning that I'm making. Now, that's an amazing path in this heyday of self-empowerment, right? Because in order to be able, let me slow down here. In order to create meaning and dictate meaning and make meaning, we have to have a sense of self. We have to have a sense of self. So a lot of times when I work on purpose with people, we get really clear on the purpose in 10, 20 minutes, no big deal, right? We get clear on your soul and what makes it happy and the meaning and all of that in an hour. Yes, I want to be in charge of meaning making. Exactly. So we can get clear on all the details of that, the specifics of how your soul interprets meaning, how your soul wants to contribute, and in which types of circumstances are going to feed that desire to feel meaningful. We can get clear on the emotional spectrum that I call the purpose that you're holding in the world. And then we have to live it. And where I see most people, including myself, right? We teach what we work on. Where I see us getting the most hung up is on sorry, I just got totally distracted. Is on this question of, who am I to make meaning? Who am I to say that what I determined to be meaningful and what I've determined to be important is meaningful and important? And so there's this still sort of other existential question of, yeah, but what if I'm wrong? What's the point of life? Like, it feels good when I've set it down here, but there's still this. There's still this, and I can't answer that question of who am I and what is life and what's the point. So like, is it really okay to choose it here? And the shorter answer is yes, right? The shorter answer is yes. We're always going to have these different levels. Yeah, the damn loop, right? And this really hit me for a long time, and I was just telling my assistant about it, who's amazing, by the way. And I was saying to her, it's so ironic that I work on purpose, and at the end of the day, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, we still have this question. We have this question of, what is the point of life? And that question is an answer. It's answered through choice of perspective. And that's why that question is always connected to this question of personality and who I am. And we can continually take ourselves to the point of existential crisis. We can continually take ourselves to the point of life is nothing. Because the answer is a choice about whether life is something. And so in the process of learning how to live your purpose and in claiming to own your purpose, we find a sense of self and we find a sense of strength in self. And that's why I think it's such a beautiful process of empowerment. But, and this is where I'm going to take the little deep detour, in yoga, we teach meditation in a number of different ways. And I'm talking specifically about yogic meditation. We have object meditation and non-object meditation. And so we learn the power of concentration through an object, like the breath, or like, drawing those mandalas, or focusing on a symbol, like an image of something, or painting images in your mind. We use the imagination, we use focus in order to concentrate the mind and train the mind to concentrate, so that we understand that there's a way of being that can experience the mind, right? That can experience all of this, but find focus. And then when we have that skill set of being able to find focus, we remove the object, and we're in non-object meditation. And that's very much what we're doing here, or the type of work that I do with purpose. So we start with, here's your purpose. Here's the emotional spectrum. Here's the answer to that question of, what is meaningful to me? How do I make meaning in the world? What feels like joy to me? What does it mean to hold myself? Like, who am I? What does that look like? What's my soul here trying to get at? What's my vision, my soul's vision of the world? Like, we start with the object, right? Here are the answers to those questions. Great. And then we have to focus the mind. And that's the part, like meditation, right? So that's the part of empowering ourselves to say, I have the ability to choose. I have the ability to I want to say make a choice. It's the exact same thing, but it's like, say how it is through my lens, through my experience, through my holding of my purpose and meaning in the world. I get to say what that means to me and how I create meaning here, and what all of this means for me. And that ownership process is the same as learning how to focus and concentrate in meditation with the object. So we use purpose as this object, really, to help us focus and gain our own sense of strength. Awesome, I'm with you. Yeah. So focus and gain our own sense of strength in who we are and our capacity, and really allowing, like our permission, that we allow ourselves, that we are allowed to determine the answer to this question of what's the point? What is the meaning? So we get to choose that, but that that process takes a while, because it brings up the question of, well, who am I? Who am I to say that when who knows? Who am I to say that the point is to lighten up a bit when maybe the point is to be totally connected? Like, who am I to say that the point was to explore over here and have this fun and meet people and like see the world, when actually maybe the point was to work over there and do that thing? Like, it brings up a lot of those questions, and the answer is always going to be in here. It's always going to be, no, it was the right thing for me. It was on purpose for me. I'm now making it mean something for me. And that's the beauty of the purpose as the emotional spectrum, is it gives us the lens to look at all these experiences that we're going through and realize, oh, the bad ones are on purpose too. It's the low end of the spectrum. And the high ones, purposeful, high end of the spectrum, right? So, but where does that leave us? At some point when we've chosen, when we've owned ourselves, when we've owned this ability to shape our own lives and create meaning for ourselves, which is a journey, in a very subtle journey that I think most of us are on forever. But at every stage, there's new confidence. And yes, and it's moment by moment. Yes. Hallelujah, sister. Yes, it is moment by moment. And that's what I love about purpose as an emotional spectrum. It's not requiring you to do. It's acknowledging your inherent state of being. And when you're in that state of being, you're along that spectrum. If mine's enough and not enough, I feel not enough quite a bit. That is on purpose for me, and it's a gift for me to renegotiate my own experience in the world to feel enough, right? To hold this wholeness. It's a journey you can make. Even if, yes, oh my gosh, yes, Shannon's very stubborn. And a shining example of this, because you are now so on purpose. And when I say that, I don't mean that you wake up every day farting rainbows. I mean that Shannon now is in control of her experiences, in the sense that she uses things that aren't great to make herself greater. And that to me is living on purpose, because now we are in control of the storyline and meaning. Because when we're not in control of the storyline, we've all been there, right? Something happens, we're like, well, this means that I'm a failure. No, it doesn't. It means you've made it mean that you're a failure. And when you're in control of the story that you're telling yourself, when you are in control of how you feel and feel like you have some agency in the world, then, yeah, exactly. Then you're now in a relationship with life that's on purpose. And that's what I mean by being on purpose. So when we get to that place where we're in that role of agency, permission with ourselves, knowing that we have an interactive relationship with life and that we do get to choose and make meaning in the way that is meaningful for us, then we move into a space of non-object meditation, right? What happens when we take away the object of purpose? What happens when we take away the object of meaning? So if this whole thing has been about making meaning and feeling meaningful and feeling on purpose and feeling purposeful and knowing that our lives are meaningful and purposeful, what happens when we take away meaning and purpose? Because that's where we go. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't about that to start with. Those are games that we're playing in our minds in order to find that sense of security and stability, right? This is the third piece, that grounding in the giant spinning of the universe and life. And so I find meaning, I find purpose, and that is something for me to hold on to as this world spins. Spins in joy, spins in trauma, spins in everything. I know my meaning, I know my purpose, I am holding on to this, and this is who I am. And then we don't need that someday, right? We no longer need that self-definition. And so my end-all be-all with helping people with purpose and meaning isn't to help them with purpose and meaning. It's to find that beautiful sense of stillness. And in the short term, we need a pole to hold on to, right? Because if everything's spinning, I don't know how to stay still. We've got to hold on to something. And then when we know how to stay still, when we know how to find that place of peace, when we know how to find that place of connection, when we know how to find that place of interaction with life in a way that feels open and expansive and, what's the word, like give and take relating, we don't need We don't need the definitions. We don't need the pull to keep ourselves steady. We are steady. We are steady. And that really for me is the goal. The end goal is inner peace, right? It's always been inner peace. We just use these tools along the way to get us there. And it's a very, very powerful and I think important tool. I think purpose is probably the most important tool that any of us could be exploring, because it opens us to this bigger question about who am I? What am I allowed to do? Am I really allowed to say how it is? What is meaning to me? How do I make meaning? How do I feel meaningful? How do I relate to all of this? What does this mean? What do you mean? What does love mean? Purpose invites us into all of those conversations. And not only that, it kind of holds our hand as we walk through all of that, because all of that is pretty overwhelming. It's all pretty overwhelming. And so as we're walking through navigating this concept of purpose and meaning and getting stronger and stronger in our own space of self-definition, right? In our own space of meaning and of like that surrendered space of, wow, like let's let life happen, but also feel deeply and experience deeply and witness deeply with emotion and presence. Not witnessing like this, but witnessing like, oh, I feel that. I'm letting life happen to me. I'm letting myself feel all of this experience of life, and I'm creating some stories about that and what it means for me, right? It's beautiful or it's bad, or it's uplifting or it drags you down. Like whatever stories we make, or we could just be in a space of feeling all of that life and just feeling it and feeling it and feeling it and feeling it and going, oh my gosh, this is life. Hey, Sarah, oh my gosh, this is life. And so we at some point just look down at purpose holding our hand and we're like, oh, I don't need you anymore. You carried me through all of these conversations. You carried me down the longest and most confusing path of my life. But I'm okay now. I'm okay now. I can stand in this. I can stand in this and find that stillness, that deep, deep inner rightness, and I'll be okay. And that to me is so, so powerful. So when you're thinking about purpose, I want you to think about all of those stages of it, right? That there's these 3 different layers, if not more layers. It's probably infinite. And that we get really honed in on this one definition or 2 definitions or 3 definitions. But first, be clear what you're asking. Be clear the kind of answer that you're actually seeking, because that's going to change the type of questions you need to be asking and the type of exercises that are going to help, or the type of experiences that are going to help you out. So first, get clear on exactly which question you're asking. And if you don't know what I mean, go back and watch the beginning, because we talked about it. And then second, know that even when we find an answer to what's our purpose, and we find a way of being that feels meaningful and purposeful, there are still bigger questions, because the answer's always coming back to, well, what are you going to make it mean? How are you going to feel purposeful? Right? The question's always coming back to, how are you finding stillness? How are you finding stillness? How are you finding stillness? How are you finding stillness among the spinning of life, which may or may not mean anything, depending on how you look at it, right? Right? How are you going to create that sense of inner peace and alignment for yourself as life changes and shifts and ebbs and flows? And that really is the journey. That's the journey. And we're using purpose as our best friend to talk us through that and walk us through that, but that is the journey. And so when you feel those days where you're like, wait, I thought I had this all set, but today life is clearly meaningless, it's cool. That's cool. That doesn't mean anything's gone wrong. It's part and parcel of the question and the journey that we're on, right? It's part and parcel of using purpose and meaning as our way into living as ourselves through our own personality-based perspective, which is the only view you've got, right? It's the only view you've got, but there's this bigger stuff, and we all feel it. If you're here, you feel it. There's all this bigger stuff, but there's this, and this is me. Yeah, thanks, Shannon. Amen to all this, exactly. So that feeling of like the disconnect between our personality driven, our self-focus, our individual consciousness, to put it in those terms, The difference between our individual consciousness and universal consciousness, and that disconnect that we're like, wait, but, like, yeah, we're going to have that some days. We're going to have that some days, but the answer always comes back to, what's the choice here to find the stillness? To find the stillness, to find the peace, to find that sense of knowing that there is all of that, but this is the only way that you can see it and think about it and feel it and interact with it and experience it right now. So no answer to these questions is ever going to be fully satisfying, right? Because the hint of something else is always there. And that's okay, because I personally believe that life is not about getting 100% answers, definitive answers to questions. I believe it's about finding that stillness within. And we can find stability in instability. And we can find assuredness in confusion. And we can become okay with never being in control. And that, to me, is the beautiful gift that working with purpose and meaning gives us. But we really got to spend a bit of time with it, right? Like, we don't go straight to non-object meditation. The mind doesn't know how to concentrate. We start with object meditation, learn how to focus, learn who we are, learn how the mind wanders, learn how the emotions get up, learn how you're like, I'm tense, I have to leave. I probably should be doing laundry right now, right? Like, we spend years learning to train and the mind to focus. And it's the same thing with purpose. We can work for years with our purpose and about how we create meaning and how we look at purpose and how we bring ourselves back from crappy days and existential crises and all of that, because we're learning how to focus. We're learning how to find that sense of stillness. And once we find that sense of stillness, we can let go of meaning and purpose as the fundamental questions. Because then the question is, how can I stay here? And who am I to stay here? And how can I live this? Perhaps with more intentionality and purpose, perhaps with more deliberate meaning. But knowing that we don't have to hold these questions forever, and that there's a much bigger journey here, much bigger journey, and it's a beautiful journey. So I hope that answers some questions. What did I title this? What's your purpose? Yeah, so I hope that answers some questions, particularly if you're really struggling with, I wish I knew my purpose. Watch the beginning, and I want you to get really clear on which question you're actually asking and what you really want to know. Like, what do you actually want to know and why? Because if what you really want to know is, well, I want to know my purpose so that I know exactly what kind of job to get and I know why I'm unsatisfied here, that's a very different question. And it's also something we can answer in like an hour. If your question is, well, I want to know the meaning of life so that I feel safe in the universe, it's going to take a bit of time, right? Not to answer the question, but to feel that safety, because we've got to train ourselves to focus, just like we train ourselves with object meditation. We have to train ourselves to find that stability and to find that stillness. So different question, different path to get to the answer. All totally possible, all totally doable. And you know, I work on the full swath of purpose and meaning, and then the mystery beyond it, right? Then the existential beingness. Maybe two words that mean the same thing. So I get it. I get all these different stages. I get where we are along that path, and I want you to know that I'm there. I've been at all of those stages, frustrating and struggling with the exact same questions, wanting different answers, but not knowing how to ask the question. So if you're struggling with what's my purpose, go back and watch the beginning, and I want you to tell me, like in the comments or privately message me or anything, for your own sake, clarify what you really want to know and why you want to know it, what you want to do with that information. Because just having that level of intellectual clarity about what you're really asking around purpose and what you really want out of that answer is going to be so huge, because now we know how to interpret experiences that are coming, because I trust life to give us exactly what we want, not in the package we want it, but exactly what we need in order to find those answers. So once we have very clearly articulated the desire, then we know how to interpret what life is bringing us. And we can say, oh man, I think I was subtly asking for an answer to that. And look, here it is. Not at all like I expected. So I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear what you're looking for, why you want it, especially around purpose, and where you think right now you are in this process of determining meaning and purpose in your life. So I hope that was helpful, and I'll talk to you soon. Mwah.